and share my screen. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep.
Fantastic. All right. So today is the 7th week of this series, and this is going to be about the improvised instinct. Next week, we're going to talk about the avoid improvised instinct. So this will be a fun day today. You know, there's a lot, I think, different instincts people have different understandings of, and sort of say, oh, I've been really struggling with avoid verify and or avoid authenticate. They're two that people often tell us that they struggle to understand. I think improvise, people think they understand it, but therein lies the risk. A little bit like people have, you know, enough knowledge to be dangerous. I think there are some really interesting nuances around the improvised instinct that I want to cover off today that hopefully will be enlightening to all of you and even to me with the feedback I get from you, which I always find really helpful. So let's, as far as some housekeeping goes, one of the things we do is look at the culture of the people who are attending, just in case that will have any bearing on how we look at the setup for today. And there on the right, you can see the mix of IDs, a little bit more in the improvised drive today, not a whole lot more. So it's you know, a great sampling of all 4 drives each week, which I think is really cool. And what I would encourage you to do is, no matter your drive, please be interactive. If you have a question, don't have any fear around that. The same question that you're thinking of, others might be thinking of it, or the same comment you want to share. But we really value the diversity of perspective, the fact that you see things differently. Sometimes the best thing people get out of these discussions is they say, wow, I just wouldn't have thought someone else would think like that, you know? And so when you share from that different angle, it's really enlightening to others. You can see here very similar as the weeks progress. In terms of your own housekeeping, just doing a self-check to say, well, where are you today in terms of the peak performance indicator? Are you in stride or out of stride? And that's what the green arrow here in the middle represents, that when you're in stride, you get all of those goodies at the top of the chart. That's when you give your very, very best performance. You make your best decisions. It's when you're happiest and most fulfilled. You get that sense of achievement that a lot of people long for and strive for. Your self-esteem, your confidence, your self-worth, they're all at their best, and your health and your energy is at its very best. And that's why people who are working in stride can say that they've worked for hours on end and they feel as energized as anything, whether they're getting paid for it or not. And yet other people can be in a meeting that goes for 15 minutes, but because it's pulling them so out of stride, they can feel exhausted by the end of it. And, you know, your energy, your behavior is all affected. As you can see on that horizontal axis, it's all affected by the degree to which you are in stride and out of stride. And so I would encourage you, if you want to, you know, live your best possible life, set yourself the bar of being at least an 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 on this peak performance indicator scale. And that means that if 10 is you're completely in stride, you know, at your very best, just shining, flying, soaring like the wind beneath your wings. If that's a 10 and a 1 is you can hardly get out of bed, you just check yourself and go, okay, what's my number? What's the number coming up for me today? I will tell you that for me, I feel like I'm a 10. And that's everything from the sleep I've had, the nutrition I've had, the clothes I wear, the setup I have at the office, you know, everything working well. I feel really fantastic and at my very, very best today. And I think that's something we can relatively control. As you become more self-aware, you know, you get to know the things you need to have to be able to then truly shine. And 8, 9, or 10 is where you want to be if you want to cast your very best shadow and get the most out of your own life. Does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Paul,
yeah.
Quick comment. This is Craig Burkhardt. I'm not on camera. Sorry about that.
Craig.
But I just these events, these meetings have been actually very, very good for me. Thank you for everything that you do for us. It's tough. I was going to make a comment about being in stride. I want to ask you a quick question about that because I'm coming off a 27-hour conference call, literally 27 hours with a customer.
Yep.
And I'm feeling dead, but think it's energy level. I'm usually at 8, 9, or 10 in stride. But later or at some point today, put that in the back of your head and make a comment on how lack of sleep or stuff like that can affect us.
Right. So I'll answer, first of all, I hope they bought.
We increased the deal another $1 million because of all of it, but very yes.
That's a good hourly rate. I'll take one of those. That's great.
It was worth the 27 hours, but dang, was that hard to do.
Well done, Craig. Well done. You guys are on fire at the moment. I love what you're doing. So, so look, there are a number of ingredients that all need to add up. So nutrition is one, exercise is another, sleep and rest and recovery is another. And I say sleep, rest, recovery, meaning depending on how much you're working out, you know, things like meditation or massage can really be essential to, you know, yoga. Those sorts of things can be really essential to getting balanced and centered again. So you've got to have those things as well. But what we find is of all of the things you can have and do that get you either in or out of stride, the degree to which you're being true to your own instincts, your true self, is probably the biggest planet in the universe. You know, a little bit like the universe. There are lots of planets, but the sun is the center of the universe. And it's similar to what happens with your ID. It's your true self, and you need to be true to that. So, you know, even if you had a fantastic meeting, you're a human being and you still need food and you still need rest. And that's, therefore, you're not so much out of stride, you're just depleted because you haven't either eaten or slept, you know. And as you then address those, I'm sure with the success you're having, you'll be back in stride very quickly. I don't think it would be the right thing to say, oh, we've got a strategy for the fact that you can not eat or not sleep, and here's how you still stay in stride. You know, you're still a human being that needs to do that. That said, you know, just even what we're going to do and cover today could be energizing for you and help you get through longer than if you were doing something that was more depleting. Okay, just before we get into the session today on the Improvise Drive, coming back to the comment you asked, or the question you asked before, Susan, after we finish next week, we are planning another series of webinars for you to build on this. So starting the week of July 15, it'll be 15th in the US and 16th in Australia, the morning of the 16th. We have a variety of topics that we're going to be covering through that 8-week period. And they're going to be a little bit of a different format to what we've done previously. So if those of you who have sort of shared the journey all the way through from the beginning of COVID, we did, I think it was 6 weeks first up on working virtually. So working in teams virtually, working from home, leading virtual teams. All of those recordings are on our website, and we covered that series. And because they were so popular and well received, and people are asking for more, as a way of, you know, continuing that contribution to just try and help people stay in stride and at their best through a very challenging time in the world, we put the series together on a deep dive into the 8 directions of the 4 drives. We're still in the middle of that, obviously. We've got today and next week to go. And then just the, you know, just the popularity and the feedback we get has been so positive. And I feel like we could just go forever with different topics that could be valuable. So these are the sorts of topics that have come up from the questions that people have asked. I'll go through them quickly in a second. But the changing format is I'd like to make them more interactive in terms of some live interviews and case studies. So let me share them. So the first one, and we're going to do this in the first week of that next series, and that's on ID combinations. Obviously, through this 8-week series, we've just dealt with each instinct on its own, and we've had a lot of questions around, okay, but how do my 2 drives work together? Or the fact that I've got one drive that's more intense than another drive, or I've got a 5, how does that work? So I'm going to do a session on the combination of those different drives and intensities as we kick that new series off. And then we've got a variety of different topics that we'll cover each of those weeks. So one of them is on communication. So what are the ways to communicate and approach people with different drives so that you can ignite their action or get the response you're looking for, not just get a reaction, but get the response that you're looking for. And I'm interested if there are volunteers that say, well, I've got a situation, I'd like you to deal with this live with me interactively. I'd like to do that because I've had one of the things that's come up, as you can see here in the yellow box, is people have said, it'd be really great to see you do some live coaching facilitation with people and we can watch and learn from that. So I can do some, you know, a full out session with, you know, say 2 or 3 people in a session for an hour. But I'd also love to have people that might have specific issues that we just talk to or talk with for, you know, 5 to 10 minutes through these other sessions on communication or on stress or on relationships. So on the one on the peak performance coaching, I'm expecting that we'll do a couple of sessions on the peak performance coaching. And the other one that's really been popular is on relationships. And we might end up even doing more on relationships depending on what actually plays out. And depending on how many people volunteer and say, hey, I'd love you to, help unpack our relationship, whether it's a personal relationship, like a, spouse relationship, whether it's a parenting relationship, parent and child, or whether it's a business pairing, whether it's, a leader and subordinate or two people trying to work together, and we put their IDs on the table and talk through the real case studies. So this is what we're going to be covering. And if you have situations or would like to personally be involved in sharing your own, getting coaching on your own circumstances, please get in contact with me or Ian ahead of time, and we'll coordinate with you to make that happen on the day. And it will be very live and authentic. I'm, best doing these things sort of straight off the top. I think they're very real that way, but want to make sure that whoever's involved is really comfortable with the process. So this is what we're going to be covering for the next 8 weeks. If there's something not on here that you would like to cover, it's not too late to incorporate that maybe into one of these areas. So please, please suggest if, any idea or question that you might have that you'd like to see us cover. Are there any questions before we kick on into the session? And they'll be the same format of, 1 hour each, same time of the week. Okay, with that, let's get into the Improvise drive. So I've shared with you for the last couple of weeks a visual for the drive. So I thought I'd share this visual just to give a sort of snapshot of like a metaphor for what you might keep in mind with the drive. So if the Improvise drive is all about energy, basically, positive energy and the spark and the that's why we've got the sort of the fireworks, going off in all sort of directions. It's just a contribution of energy. That's the Improvise drive. Whereas the avoid Improvise drive is more into the stability and certainty of the sun. It rises and it sets, and it is absolutely dependable to do that every single day. Even if there are things in the way of it, like, it's raining and it's cloudy, we all know the sun still rises, the sun still sets. It still goes from dawn to dusk. Even if we can't see the sun on particular days, we know it's still there. And that's that dependability, the certainty, the stability of the avoid Improvise drive, metaphorically. So that's the visual that we would use to describe that drive. In terms of the descriptors, and I've just shown you both sides of the equation here, so it just helps maybe understand the differences. The Improvise drive is all about taking things that are seemingly impossible and helping make them become possible. So that, and the key thing there is they've got to seem to be impossible for the improviser to really engage and ignite to action. Whereas for the avoid improviser, they want certainty. And so what they'll look at are the things that are likely to get in the way, the risks that are going to pop up that could block them from actually achieving. If the improviser is into excitement, positivity, animation, fun, passion, that all of that energy shining through, it's more the logical, diligent, steadfast, even-keeled nature of the avoid improviser. The improviser thrives on interaction and brainstorming. It's the avoid improviser that thrives on solitude, and they actually get their energy by getting away from the noise and focusing, just on their own. And if the improviser is the one who sort of hypes it up, plays it up, promotes it, it's the improviser that plays it down. So it's just, I don't want to big note it. I'll let the results speak for themselves. It's not so much playing it down, and they do tend to highlight more the negatives and tell you, well, look, I'm not sure if I can do this. I'm not sure about that. They play it very safe because they're not going to overpromise and not deliver. Delivery is really the key motivator for the avoid improviser, but it's the making the promise and then the excitement of how the hell am I going to deliver that ignites all of that innovation that comes out of the improviser. So that's the snapshot of that drive. And what we're now going to do is unpack it and talk about the traits, the different things that motivate and demotivate, the strengths, vulnerabilities, the genius of that drive, what causes you stress, how other people see you, all of those different components that we've shared in other weeks. That's what we're about to go through now for the remaining 45 minutes or so. let's start with that. I will just stop sharing so I can see you all. So what I'll start with is just some of the traits, and I'm not going to cover everything here. I will share the slide when we post the recording that's got a lot more of the detail on it, but for the sake of time and keeping it interactive and engaging, I'll just share some of the key things. But I'd say to you, one of the first traits to keep in mind for the Improvise drive is it's the says yes to things. It's the drive that instinctively the response always is yes. And one of my favorite ways of explaining the improvised drive, when you get a lot of avoid improvisers at times saying, well, but I improvise. I'm like, yes, you can improvise. That's the behavior of improvising. But are you driven to do it? Are you doing it because it's what fulfills you, or are you doing it because you have to? And the question I often ask to illustrate the point is, if I said, I can see Steve Blunter's on the call. Hi, Steve. I haven't seen you for a long time. I think I've even had this discussion with you at times. But if you say to a strong improviser, hey, can you do me a favor? You can hardly even get to favor before they're saying yes. The minute they hear can you, the answer is yes. And it's an emphatic yes. It's not, well, the avoid improviser would say, well, tell me what the favor is, and then I'll tell you whether I can do it. For the improviser to kick in and play, they need to say yes before they know what it's actually going to take. And so that's the instinct. If you approach an improviser leader to say, can I have, the answer is yes. But it's only a question of how do I now deal with that? But that's the instinctive nature. So even if the answer is going to be no, they probably won't tell you no, because that's almost a word that they hate using. It's not that they can't use it. It just is not in their realm to want to sort of say anything that's got no on it. So they might ask you a question, or they might come up with a different yes. Like if you want to time off tomorrow, they might say to you, does it need to be tomorrow? Or what time are you thinking of tomorrow? But they're still trying to go with a yes. Somehow it's going to be a yes. That's the essence of that drive. It's all about taking things forward rather than stopping and analyzing or even rejecting. And so that's one of the most common traits that illustrates the improvised drive versus the avoid drive, is just this need to say yes. I remember one time when my son Jace, he was about 4 and he's an 8 in improvise. And I thought he was, but I wasn't really sure. And I was sort of playing with it to sort of see. And I said to him, hey, Jake, because excitement and animation really gets them engaged. And he was, I think we're down the snow. And I wanted him to go to bed, but he wouldn't go to bed, And I said, hey, Jace, you want to do something really exciting? He's like, yeah. I'm like, this is like so exciting. He's like, yes. I'm like, let's go to bed. And he goes, yes, no, But the first instinct was he wanted to do whatever it was that sounded exciting. And so that's how you engage an improviser as well, is you don't make it sound boring. If I went to an improviser and said, Fred, have you got a minute? Something I need to talk to you about, and I sound really monotone and boring, that is going to turn them off. But if someone sounds animated, passionate, positive, that in itself, the way you look, the way you sound, that is what engages the improvised drive. Any questions or comments?
I'll make a quick comment about the way people. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut someone off? Sorry.
There you go.
Okay, I was going to make a comment about the way I'm a number 7 on Improvise, and the way people, like, before they even open their mouths, the way they walk up to me or come to me has already set my brain the way I'm about to react.
Absolutely.
And so I lead a team of incredibly gifted engineers, and I was an engineer for 20 years before I was in leadership, but they're incredibly detailed oriented, and they have a lot of the world's weight on their shoulders constantly. So even when they bring me good news, they've got the world's weight on their shoulders, and their look can be negative. And so I fight that. I have to always, like, a little voice inside my brain telling myself, whatever this is coming at me, it could be good news. It could be good news. Just relax. And I just commenting, confirming what you say about that. It's incredible.
Well, and I see in the chat, Craig, you raise a really good point, which is you can actually sort of not like it about yourself because it tends to make you commit to things that you wished you didn't. And I think this is where self-awareness comes in. So as someone with that improvised drive myself, people have asked me, we'd like you to join this particular group, or we'd like to get your advice, or in particular, I wonder if you could coach me. And I look at the energy of that person, and it's not really, I know that it's not going to bring out the best in me. And so although my instinct is to want to say yes and help them, I will find a different yes. Like it could be as simple as saying, you don't actually want me. I know you think you want me, but what you're really looking for is someone who can help you with X, Y, and Z, and I'll help you find that person. Or I will help you for one meeting. I've had many coaching sessions where people have asked to engage me as a coach. I'm like, okay, I'll give you one session and I'll give you everything I've got in one session, but I'm not going to sign up for a long-winded experience when I know that that's not going to be me at my best. So, you can still say yes. I remember there was someone who was a friend of ours that I struggled with them coming to dinner, and I didn't want to reject them. But what I would say is if they said we should catch up, I'd say, yeah, that's a great idea. Why don't we also invite these other people to join us? And that way it creates more energy in the group. And that way it's a yes, but in a way that still has energy around it that would keep me engaged, So I think as you get more self-aware, you can say yes. There's different types of yeses, that still allow you to keep it moving forward, but protect your energy at the same time. I think the thing to watch out for is the improviser who's not self-aware would be saying yes to things, would be making promises. One of the vulnerabilities I was going to talk about was, making promises for other people to deliver. And it happens a lot in leadership where the improviser leader will say yes to things like to a customer, we'll get that done for you, get it done by this afternoon. And then they go and delegate that to somebody else and now expect, stop smiling, Sarah, I can see what you're referring to. It's Sarah on my team, I know exactly what you're thinking, but it's the avoid improviser that's then thinking, well, hang on a sec, you promised this for me, but you didn't ask me whether or not I could fit this into my day-to-day, and that creates a tension that Sarah's never experienced in her life, I'm sure. Sorry, Sarah, I'll just apologize.
Paul, it's Gail here. My 9 on Improvise, I'm not a morning person. So I sit here every morning at 7 o'clock, sort of a bit out of it. The minute you put up the Improvise stuff, I could feel myself lift. And I've been smiling ever since, and I normally don't smile at 7 in the morning. It's quite beyond me. So that was really, really interesting. It just kicked in and I've been, energized ever since, even though I'm still half asleep.
Well, it's a great point, Gail. It's a great point, Gail. When your needs are met, no matter what the time of day is or the circumstances, it's like there's this little character inside you that's your ID, and once it has its needs met, it will fire up. I've seen people who have said, I can't stand up there and speak. I don't know the topic. I don't have the confidence. And someone virtually pushes them onto the stage and they get up and they just perform, because once they're on the stage, in the moment, under the spotlight, the energy's firing, stuff starts coming out their mouth, and they even surprise themselves with where the hell did that just come from? But until the pressure was on, it didn't kick their instincts in. So I think it's really great self-awareness to not say that what you can't do. Actually, I learned something really good. I'm sure it was you, Greg, that taught me this, of putting the word yet on the end of things. I'm not a morning person yet. I can't do that yet. And it just sends a completely different message to your brain that says, instead of being limited with what you can't do, it's I can't play the guitar yet, is a completely different message to my brain than I can't play the guitar. And I've just found that to be a really great way of, conducting the rest of my life. That was a great gift, Greg. Thank you. All right. What do you need to motivate yourself as an improviser? Here's what you need. I'd say, number one, passion. If you're not coming from a place of passion, you're not coming. So get passionate. And a lot of people talk about, I want to find my passion. And I think there's a real sort of interesting issue here between passion and passionate. What I've found is a lot of people that look like they've found their passion have just made a choice to live passionately. And they do things passionately that look like they've found their passion. And sometimes when you do things passionately, you end up liking them a lot more, and you do find your passion. If you can find your passion and do that passionately, I think that's the nirvana. I feel very blessed that I've pretty much lived my career like that. But you can do that even, you know, if you think about your family or your relationship, you can say, has it got passion in it? I'm like, well, then be passionate, and that will probably bring the passion. But for an improviser, if you're not coming from a place of passion, you ain't coming. The second thing is fun. Fun is all about positive energy. And, you know, fun doesn't mean that you've got to have a whole lot of laughter. Fun is a different word to improvisers than to avoid improvisers. Fun to an avoid improvised person is like, you know, laughter, jokes, party time. Because there's a big distinction between work and seriousness and being diligent and the fun of being social, as it were. But fun to an improviser is just being positive, you know, moving things forward, having a light and bright room, watching the sunshine, you know, getting outside. That's, oh, I just need to get outside. That'll be fun. And they use that word a lot more broadly than an avoid improviser would use it. So that doesn't always mean it's got to be party time or social. It means it's got to be positive. Even just the look on people's faces can lack fun or can be fun. Just lots of ideas brainstorming could actually be really serious, solving the biggest, you know, financial hurdle. And an improviser walks out and says, oh man, that was fun. Like, fun, that was really serious. Yeah, but for them it was fun because it was positive and brainstorming and moving something forward. But fun and passion. Now, we could also say you need to have, you know, a deadline to perform, or you need to be able to win big. But I'd say two things that just ignite your energy are passion and having that positive, I'll say fun energy. And I use the word very intentionally because it's used differently by improvisers than avoid improvised people. We've had a lot of times, I remember this client of mine who worked for an accounting firm, Hallworth, back, you know, years ago, and he was a 1 in improvise, and he was always really serious. And a lot of people would say, we don't know what sort of day we're going to have until this guy turns up to work, and depending on what mood he's in, it sort of affects our day. And when they had their Christmas party, he was a ton of fun, you know, and everyone's like, well, why can't you be like that at work? I mean, that's what we're looking for. And he's like, no, because that's work. You know, this is like not work. But what we realized was an avoid improvise does everything seriously. So when it was time to party, he would be serious party, serious fun, as opposed to sprinkling it in all the way through. And that's what the improvisers need to see. All right, if that's what made it, the one other thing I was going to say, and I think this is really huge for those of you, particularly who are experienced with your career, with this level of self-awareness, I'd add a third component to motivate you. So passion, fun, and game-changing. You want to be game-changing. I know people say you want to win big or you want to have high impact, but I think there's even, you know, I want to do something that's transformational. I think the phrase game-changing is an incredibly powerful phrase for an improviser. And as you've progressed through your career and you've done things where you have won big and you've maybe made the money you need to make, or you've done a lot of transformations and you're sort of looking for, what do I do next to get my teeth into it that's really going to juice me? I've found that the phrase game changing is where you want to be looking. So if that's where you're at, and you know, whether it's a crossroads or just you're thinking about what are you going to do next in your particular life or journey, think about that phrase. How do you make it game changing? And you can do anything. It could be, what do you do for Christmas this year with your family? It's like, what am I going to do that's going to make it game changing? And just that contemplation around that phrase will provoke a different set of ideas than if you're just thinking of, what am I going to do to make it more fun? Or what am I going to do to make it different this year or more exciting? All of which are in the realm of improvise, but they don't they don't sort of poke the improvised bear the way game changing pokes it. Any comments or questions there?
Yeah, I was just going to say my wife is always accusing me of trying to one up, but but I've never felt comfortable with that term, but I like your term better. I love to win, but I'm really looking for game changing things. It's not one up. It's what's the next new thing that I can be excited and have fun with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually,
Okay.
Well, I'd like to say I've used transformation rather than change. Change to me is too impermanent. Transformation for me is exciting and permanent. I haven't
Right.
really ever thought about using game changing, but I'll add that to my vocabulary.
It's
Thank
funny,
you.
isn't it? Change is a bit of a yawn these days.
Yeah.
I think there's been so much work with change and change management and change leadership. I think it's a bit of a yawn. So I'd say whatever works for you. If change still works for you, run with change.
No, transformation.
Yeah, well, that works great. Run with that. I'm just sharing with you what I've found as I work with some of the best and more fulfilled leaders who are more are further into their career. I find a lot of them looking for things that are truly going to be game changing, and on a bigger playing field. So I'm thinking of one person I work with at the moment who wants to do something that's truly going to change the planet. And I mean, she's in a role that can allow her to do that. Okay, if they're the things that,
sorry, Paul, it's Green. I was just going to ask a question. So around the concept of transformation and game changing, is it conditioned on anything? Like, is it just game changing for game changing sake, or is there is there conditions around? I'll change. I'll be a game changer or a transformer as long as these things are met.
Pretty much not. It's like it's you just want to be now. It's got to be positive, and it's got to be something that will lead to positivity and benefits. They don't want negativity for anyone. It's not like selfishly positive for themselves. An improviser would hate to think that something they were doing that was positive for them caused negativity for anyone else, because that's not positive. But it's not about the money they earn or it's about how they feel. They feel like they need to win big. Susan made the comment in the chat about it's got to be, winning big, but it's not for them to win big selfishly. It's like everyone needs to win. But that's about all.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, so if that's what motivates you, the demotivations, and I think this is good for everyone to know this, and even improvisers to know this about yourself and what you can do to other improvisers. Obviously, negativity, anything negative, it kills an improviser, and I mean sucks the life out of an improviser to the point of can't act. It's like someone turns the switch off at the wall and they just can't function. It truly is. And I'm only a 7 in improvise, but for people who are 8s and 9s, when there is negativity, and negativity can be someone's look, like if they just look at you with a certain negative, face. It could be a word or a comment they've made. It could be the furniture in the room. But typically when something is negative, you just can feel your whole energy drain. And there's times where you could pick up the phone, you're about to call someone, it's really exciting, and they answer the phone with hello, and it just completely changes your energy, and you just don't feel that you can engage now the way that you're going to before they answered. I've had spouses who have said, I've come home, I'm trying to help my marriage, I've come home, I put the key in the door, I'm so excited with how I'm going to come through the door. I open the door and I see a look or I get a comment and I'm done. I can't. I mean, I was so motivated to be different, and it's like someone just magically changed things, and it's so frustrating for yourself. And there's times when if you're not in a good place, you could be doing that to other improvisers. And I think it's really important to understand how instantaneous that occurs for an improviser and how completely paralyzing it is. I'm sure there'd be someone who's had an experience of that would comment. Steve, I can see you smiling. And you're a 9, right? Aren't you a 9? You're a 9 in improvised memory. You're on mute.
I'm only an 8, Paul.
Oh, you're only an 8. Okay. You've shrunk back. You've tamed down.
Absolutely. But it's it's true. There are moments like that, and I've learned to deal with it during my career and my personal life. But I remember having this conversation back in whenever we were working together, 2005, 6, and it was very true then.
Yeah. I think it's a huge. I mean, I've only got really a couple of things I want to mention on the demotivation, but the negativity piece is one. And for those of you who are avoid improvise, it's where you want, if you're working with an improviser or living with or married to, thinking about how you show up is so important for keeping that relationship at its very best. The second key demotivator is obligation. doing things purely out of obligation, like a task, just because it's there on a list and it's got to be done, you just can't do it. And someone would say, but I gave you that list 3 days ago, or you've known for days that you've got to get that assignment done or do that task. If it's just a task and there's nothing in it but the task, like if I think of the classic one that people use is getting a tax return done, if it's just about doing the tax return because you've got to get it done, ain't gonna happen. And that's why so many improvisers say, oh, I work best with deadlines. It's not actually that you're a deadline driven person, you're an energy driven person. And until there was energy in it and the deadline turned it from a task into a challenge, because now you had to cram it or you had to race to get it done, or there was that sense of urgency about it. But that's where that comes from. It's that, well, that ever it was just a task, like the house has got to be cleaned up. You know, I've got to clean the bathroom or I've got to mow the lawn, and it's just to mow the lawn, not going to happen. But if there's something positive about it, like I've got friends coming over this afternoon and I want to be sure it looks nice, so I want to impress, or it's bugging the crap out of me that it's so long, and so I want to cut it down so that I feel better. There's now emotion involved. You're more likely to, or to get someone off your back, then you might do it because you want to change the emotion. But to do it purely because it's a task, or obligation, or a responsibility. I know many marriages have got challenges because one of the partners will say, but he or she never takes responsibility for this. And it's like, what they're really saying is, when there are tasks that we've both got to do, and I do mine and he or she doesn't do hers. And, you know, it's because there is this lack of energy around it. And once they understand that and put the energy in, whether it's by swapping them around or putting some fun and energy into it, it completely changes the dynamic of that relationship. But doing something purely out of obligation is not where an improviser is going to be engaged. Okay, in terms of the strengths, I'll just be quick on these because I know we're fast running out of time. In terms of the strength, one of the strengths in fact, I'll mention this as it's my first level of genius. One of the genius elements of the Improvise drive is the ability to just keep coming up with ideas. People look at you and think, where did that come from? And the short answer is you don't know either. You didn't ask for it. You didn't calculate it. It's not a formula that you have in your head to generate ideas. These things just come in out of nowhere. And it happens to every drive. Every drive has that possibility, not ideas, but things that just happen for them without trying, like questions for a verifier. People say, where do the questions come from? It's like, they just come. You know, the same thing with an improviser. The ideas just come to an improviser. Idea after idea after idea. And the improviser doesn't think, are they good ideas or bad ideas? They're just an idea. So, but where you've got to be careful of, an avoid improviser only shares an idea when they've already processed it and thought that it's a good idea, that this is going to be positive. And so you've got to be careful that you don't interpret an improviser's contribution, you know, as a thought through idea. They're not suggesting it because it's what they think will work. It's just an idea. They don't really care. It's like a ball bouncing. If they throw it in and it makes things bounce somewhere else, at least it's bouncing and it's moving and it's still got energy around it. And over time, we'll figure out how to make it good and how to make it work, but it's just an idea. Those ideas just keep coming. And I think it's because you don't feel that you put any effort into it, it's very easy to think that the idea is nothing special. But I can assure you that there are many avoid improvisers that look at you as an improviser and think, I wish I could do that. I mean, I'm sitting here on a Friday night thinking, I want to go out for dinner and I've got no idea of what to do. No idea. You know, my brain doesn't think of where to go. And someone else could say, what about if we go down to this restaurant? Oh, that's a good idea. I never thought of that. And because it doesn't feel like it was that much effort, it feels like it's just common sense. But it just doesn't happen as easily for an avoid improviser. That doesn't mean they can never have an idea. I'm talking about the flowing of those ideas. It's one of the great strengths. And I would just call out, it's what I would call the white belt level of genius of that, of the improvised drive. The thing that you do so naturally that you probably take for granted about yourself. And in any group, I can assure you it's not what everyone else is going to bring to the table. The second strength I'd call out is your ability to create wow, to make things, you know, amazing, to put the electricity in there, to energize it, to create that sense of excitement and buzz that turns it into something that engages people rather than just a task to be done that's more obligatory. That bringing that energy and excitement and buzz and sense of wow, so that it's impressive and creates impact. That's something that an improviser does really naturally and really constantly. And again, it's not that others can't do it, but it doesn't come as naturally and as constantly as it does for the improviser, or frankly, that they do it as well. And the last thing I'd say in terms of the strengths is very future focused. No matter what happens, it's all about how do we take it forward. When someone's talking to you about a new idea, your mind instantaneously is like, what can we do with that? How do we take that forward? Who can this impact? It's all around going forward and driving growth, positivity, possibilities. That sense of future, imagining, dreaming, that sense of how we, do things that have never been done before. All of that is the strength faculty of the improvised drive. A couple of vulnerabilities I think are worth calling out. One is what I would call the lighthouse effect. And this has been called out about my own leadership style, is that because you can bring this energy wherever you are and wherever you focus, that's where it's all lit up. And people get a level of confidence when you're in the room because of that energy. And when you then turn and put your energy somewhere else, wherever you're focusing is all lit up because that's where you are. But now it's not as energized back where you've left. And that changes the level of confidence that people are able to get on and do the job. And when you come back later and go, how did you go with that? And people go, well, we didn't act on it. We had all these questions and we had this and we had that. And it's like, hang on, I thought everyone was good to go. Yeah, but what changed all subconsciously and no one's fault. It's just a dynamic that occurs because when you shift your energy, it actually sucked energy from the group or took away the energy that you were inadvertently contributing to the group. And that changes their confidence and their ability to perform. And it's a really important dynamic as an improviser to understand that about yourself so that you know this dissonance that occurs between when you're in the room and when you're out of the room. The performance and confidence happens when you're there, when you're not there. That dissonance is very real. And it's something that, the more astute improviser leaders, it's really quite an epiphany when they first realize that about themselves. I mentioned before about overcommitting, but I didn't talk about oversimplifying. And one of the real vulnerabilities of an improviser is when you turn around, someone's got a problem, and you go, oh, that's easy. We can just do this. This will only take a few minutes. And you make things sound really easy. Often things aren't that easy, but it's how you react. And it's very belittling of other people. So it's, for someone who's into positive energy, and you think you're being positive by saying, oh, that's easy, we can just do such and such. The very fact that you talk that way to an avoid improviser is incredibly negative and demeaning. They maybe wouldn't use the word negative, but they would say it was demeaning. When they've spent all weekend thinking about it, and your reaction is, oh, that's easy, you just do X. And it is a good idea, and maybe it would even work, but it's very, very demeaning. So as a vulnerability, I think it's a really valuable thing to call it out and sort of just acknowledge, even if it's as simple as saying, have you already put a lot of work into this? And like, yeah, I spent all weekend thinking about this and worrying about this, and it's like, okay, well, I have an idea. I don't know whether it's going to work, but I'll throw it on the table in case it helps. That's going to land more positively than just, oh, that's easy, just do this. That's the vulnerability that comes from that drive. And the other one I would call out is because you come from a place of passion, it sounds like your mind's made up and you've made a decision and this is what you're going to do. And I've had so many leaders who have, the meeting is like shut up and not contributed because they've said, well, it sounded like you already made the decision. It's like, no, I haven't made the decision. That's what we're here for. But the conviction, the passion you talk with sounds like conviction, or it sounds like a request. And so people have thought, okay, I'll go off and do all that work because it sounds like that's what you want. I just had this same experience on Tuesday afternoon. I had someone come in to look at some work at my home, and I was just talking about it. So they went off and did all this investigative research work, thinking it's what I wanted. And then when I didn't do it, they were like, but you said you wanted it. So I didn't say I wanted it. I was just talking about the possibilities of imagine if we could do this, that, and the other thing. So they went and got it started and put 5 to 6 hours of work in on this. And I had no idea that they didn't, instigated it. And it caused, they were an avoid improviser, and their own excitement about, they were interested in the creativity of it. But it just caused some friction, and they felt really taken for granted, So that's me knowing this. So I think it's a really important vulnerability. That's why we call it a vulnerability, because it's your ID, it's your instinct. It will always be there. And that's something to be really aware of in terms of how your energy and the conviction, that the impact that then has on how other people interpret that. All right, let's talk about causes of stress for the improviser. Stress is firstly a really negative thing for an improviser. People say, but isn't there such a thing as positive stress? Well, I would change that from positive stress to positive pressure. There's positive pressure that can ignite an improviser, but the things that cause stress in that negative sense are firstly negativity, and an improviser wouldn't necessarily say that they're stressed over it. They're just paralyzed by it. But what causes depression? And I have found, excuse me, that of all the different illnesses that people can get depending on their ID, because I've found different illnesses land with different instincts, and it's one of the components of the next 8-week series I was going to talk about under stress, is what are the different illnesses I've found pop up for different IDs. The concept of depression, whilst from a chemical point of view can happen for every ID, often it's the improvisers won't say they're stressed, they'll say they're depressed, because it's all emotion. If you think about improvised drive as the energy drive, improvisers are either as high as a kite and, absolutely ecstatic and animated and passionate, or they'll hit the lowest lows and they'll say, I feel really depressed. That does not mean they're suffering depression. It means they're feeling depressed, like suppressed, And then as quickly as they felt depressed, something could happen and it ignites them, and away they go, excited again, as high as a kite. And that's both a strength in terms of their ability to reignite quickly, and it's a vulnerability because you can be quite erratic emotionally. And it can be very hard for people, depending on what your other drives are and your own level of self-awareness, it can be very hard for people to interpret you and understand where they stand with you. But that sense of what negativity can do is cause your emotions to go to a point of being depressed, and that feeling of I just can't act. I don't want to get out of bed. I just don't want to act. There's nothing positive that I've got to look forward to today. I'm just depressed, and it's not so much true depression. It's more like an inertia where you just can't act. But the feeling, the words you use to describe it, is one of depressed. Now, if there are other things going on as well that are really negative emotions, and it has a chemical effect on you, I'm not saying you could never have, clinical depression, but the word depression is used much more commonly by improvisers to just explain the emotional state they're in that moment. Does anyone maybe want to comment on that? That's experienced that or can talk to that for their own experience as a strong improviser?
The one thing I'll talk about that, I don't actually get depressed, but I think inertia is certainly the word for sometimes. So if I wake up in the morning, I don't have a whole lot planned, I can sort of go, what is there not to get out of bed for? But then I do know that if I am feeling a bit blue, is what I call it, just a bit blue, then the best thing for me is to go out and catch up with somebody, and then I'll immediately flip, because I'm thinking about them rather than my stuff. So right. There are times when I see that I'm maybe just a bit flat, a bit blue, then what I do about it is I've got a few things I do about it.
Right.
I'm Paul, it's Gail, I'm a 9. And since we've been working from home, one of my team is performing. And the other day she gave me a piece of work that was just absolutely so bad. And I just went, I can't work anymore. And I couldn't do anything for the rest of the day. I was just so deflated and so depressed. I didn't actually use that word, but I used something very, very similar. And I just went, I can't do this. And it was just stupid, but it was what happened.
Yeah, I remember being in a business partnership years ago, and I would come in to start my day, and we got to a very, toxic place. And I'd come in and there was a fax there that had something in it that was very, attacking. And I'm like, I'm done. I just can't function. And I found techniques like journaling, for example, work for me, but I couldn't move on to what I wanted to do next in my day. I had to do all this recalibrating, regrouping work to try and muster up some energy again, but it completely flattened me. And I've had personal situations where that's occurred, and you're at a point where you just can't function. I wouldn't have said I was depressed. I was certainly dysfunctional in terms of not being able to function and had to do things to get back to that place. But it's incredibly debilitating. That's probably the word, debilitating as hell, But I wanted to mention under this probably the bigger ultimate cause of stress is the feeling of hopelessness. Improvisers live on hope. Even when you're debilitated, if there's hope, like think of like in a marriage or any form of relationship, someone can say something that's really nasty or debilitating, and you can deal with it. You might just need some space to let your energy regroup and deal with it, and eventually get back and you can do it. But once you get to this place of hopelessness, like I have no hope left that I can turn this around. When I was studying what improvisers who would go, for example, through a divorce, and I'd say, but you persevered and persevered and persevered, and you came up with all these ideas to keep going. And there was then a time where you said, I'm done. What was the done moment? And I studied these for all the different drives, but for the improvised drive, ultimately what it came down to was not the inertia of negativity. A negativity might be, accumulating, but the moment where they went, I'm done, was when there was this sense of hopelessness that landed in their bones. And once that lands, you are done. Wherever there's hope, you can do anything. I mean, as you know, I had a stepdaughter that was dying, but I've had children that have had, life-threatening illnesses. But wherever you've got hope, you can do anything, and you muster all your energy and ideas. But hope is the oxygen that improvisers live and breathe on. And the minute you feel hopeless and that sense of hopelessness comes into you about a task or a relationship, you are done. And there's nothing that will shift that dysfunction other than a total change. And if it is about the loss of someone like a loved one, man, you need to find, I guess, a perspective that reignites some level of hope about something you can start to believe in again. Otherwise, you are completely dysfunctional. And I think it's important for the improvisers to know this about themselves, but for the avoid improvisers to know this about the improvisers you love and care about. The ultimate form of debilitation is hopelessness, and for the improvised drive, and it's huge.
Yeah, Paul, I'd say for me, I go back into my young years. I'll share a little bit of myself to the team here. My 4 years of high school, I was homeless. And while I was homeless, I wasn't hopeless. And what got me, when I look back now as a 50-year-old adult, what got me through all those challenges during those years was really I graduated with an academic scholarship from high school. So I had the hope of being seen by a college who might, give me a scholarship, and it happened. But that hope of that is what drove me through all of those 4 years of deep challenges, and shaped me who I am today. And I'm such a big believer in hope. And if there's hope, then there can be some will, and if there's some will, there's got to be a way, kind of a thing for me. And
well, that's great, Craig. If there's hope, there's possibility, and that's why if you want to really ignite an improviser, believe in them, because believing in them creates the hope. And whatever they feel that someone believes, the greatest gift my father gave me well, I shouldn't say the greatest gift because there's actually a bunch of them, but one of the greatest gifts he gave me particularly from a career point of view, and I could give you examples. I don't have time to get into them today, but his total belief in me, like absolutely believed that I could do whatever it is. And I know that the moment I agreed to develop the ID was the 28th of April, 1991. And it happened because at the dinner I was at, 2 people believed in me and I felt with total authenticity the belief that I could do it. And I did not believe I could do it, but there was this oxygen breathed into me because of the belief from others that created the hope and therefore the possibility. It's a massive, component of what makes the improviser tick. I want to finish today by talking about the black belt genius level of this drive. And this is interesting because I actually had, and the improvisers will be pleased to hear this, I actually had about 6 or 7 different, genius elements. I kept thinking, there's all these things that really are quite phenomenal about this drive in terms of all the things that they can do. But I realized they all fell actually into one key category. And when I look for the black belt level of genius, I'm looking for the thing that you do that other people look at and sort of go, how the hell do you do that? Where does that come from? That's like a psychic ability, something about your energy that just isn't the realm for others. And what I can see that it is it actually is the ability to energize. The ability to energize people and situations. And that doesn't mean energize in terms of electrify. I remember one of the people that was very involved with me at the start of my ID journey was a 9 in Improvise. And I remember there was a time when she was a nun and someone had died, and I can't remember who the person was, but I remember being involved and with the family. And I went to their home and it was all very morbid. And then this lady walked in, and just by the way she walked in and smiled and touched people on the shoulder, you could feel this light into the room and this ability to bring light-heartedness or light and positive energy. It wasn't by anything she even said. It might have been a word here and there or a look or a touch on a shoulder or a certain hug. It was just really interesting to me, the effect she had on the entire room by the energy she brought, and yet she didn't actually do anything. And it was a really beautiful gift. And I've watched, when I thought back over all the improvisers I get to work with and know and live with and love, their ability to energize in a conversation or in a situation, or how they decorate, whatever it might be, it's something that you just naturally bring and always bring, is the ability to energize and to inspire growth, to provoke change, to inject hope and optimism. All of those components are just part of your natural flair for energizing people and situations. And it's from that energy that then people see possibilities for the future and believe in themselves and imagine and dream. It's all coming from that place of you bring the energy. You don't think about it. You don't have to try to do it. All you need to do is this: show up true to yourself. Be who you are. Be in stride. And when you walk through the door, what walks with you is a sense of positivity and energy that provokes change and growth and possibilities in others. And it's a beautiful gift, and one that you should be, own it, claim it, and live true to it, because it makes a hell of a difference. So with that, we're right on time. I've spoken a hell of a lot today. I hope that's been, helpful and insightful to you guys. It is recorded. We'll be posted later today. Next week, we'll cover the Avoid Improvise drive, and look forward to seeing you all along then as well. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you so much.
See you, mate.